you. There's somebody got there. It seems to be a bit of an echo. It's actually settled down a bit now. Yeah. Good morning. Welcome to everybody for being here. I've got a couple of statements I'm going to make at the very beginning of this. But I will take apologies for absence first. No apologies, thank you. And disclosable interests. Members are reminded that they must declare their disclosable interests at this point, if you haven't already put them on to the system. So thank you very much. Before I go on to public question time, what I will do is make a statement, well, a congratulatory statement for a start, which is that our children's services have been steadily bringing our out-of-county children back into the county, having our own homes, which saves money but actually gives a much better service for our children. And in the last week, they have been the first three, Pebble House, Chelmarron and Berwyn Cottage, were all judged as outstanding, which is an amazing feat. We need really to congratulate all of our staff for that, because it's much better for our children to be here and it saves us quite a lot of money. Secondly, Havenbrook, Carebryn and Devonia were all judged as good, which is also, for me, an outstanding achievement. So everybody needs to be congratulated, especially Tanya's Children's Services team, because it's not always been the case that we've seen these things, and it's a real step forward for us. So thank you. Right, we now need to look at the statement on the Northwest Relief Road. And I will take some questions if you want, but at some point it will come back to council. The statement is that, as you all know, the Northwest Relief Road is a controversial road. Some people have loved it, some people have hated it. But we're now in a position we can no longer afford it in either direction. The meeting held with the DFT on the 23rd of June made it clear that their policy was only ever to fund 2/3 of the original scheme. And at most, that was going to be 54.4 million. And Andy and I think, both agreed that probably it was going to be less than that. But if we stick with the 54.4 million, we can work on that. The last government never built any other offers into the budget or to the policy. This is underlined in the letter from Lillian Greenwood MP that we received yesterday. 100% funding for our scheme is therefore dead in the water and was never funded when offered to the previous highways portfolio holder verbally. So it was never in writing. It was never, 100% funding was never, ever built into their policy. And if you haven't seen the letter for Lillian Greenwood, it actually refers to a lot of this, and that there were several schemes that were told verbally about 100% funding that didn't exist. So I will circulate that to all members so that you can see that. This leaves Shropshire Council with an ever-increasing costly scheme, now estimated to be 215 million, leaving us with a minimum of borrowing 155 million. It could be considerably more because construction costs are spiralling. Borrowing that sort of money would cost our residents around 6 million a year for decades. That is simply more services axed. If you've looked at the period 2 report, we have £60 million worth of savings. We are very close to the line with what we've got to save. And another 6 million a year is just unaffordable. We've now paused the road and stopped all work on site pending further discussion with the Minister Lillian Greenwood, MP. We are working with the Shrewsbury MP, Julia Buckley, to make sure this is brought forward as soon as possible. Those discussions will be around the 39 million that have already been spent on the site. We need that to be what they call off-ramp, written off as in Norfolk, so that this does not stress our budget any further. Because if this came back in to the budget, we would be immediately in a position of not being able to balance the budget, which is not a lawful position. We need, so you will see further, and you will look at the, the portfolio holder for finance will go through all of that, and you will see exactly that position when we get there. The Northwest Relief Road evidence for need is challenged by many, and indeed would have increased traffic on some roads, although it would have reduced it on others. The Shelton Road, where traffic would have increased by 150%, is an example of actually where the whole thing would have made it much worse. There are a number of areas that have been challenged over the years, and so it wasn't necessarily going to be the answer to everybody's problems, especially as it was a single carriageway road with only one entrance and exit at either end. So we are taking the traffic issues in Shrewsbury very seriously, and we will be putting forward other ways of helping ease these problems if we possibly can. Areas we may put forward to the Minister could be around the Battlefield Enterprise roundabout, which can be a nightmare in the mornings and could open up other land, but also the Dobbies Island, which is dreadful and actually forces often traffic through the town because it's easier sometimes to go around the old A5 or whatever. So there are lots of things we need to look at. We also need to look at how we manage to sort out the Welshpool Road, which again is very, very congested at times in the morning. There are no promises around this, but we do need to do some significant work if we're going to keep the town viable. As soon as we've had that appointment with the Minister, any outcome, we will of course let members and residents know as soon as we possibly can. And any further plans around the traffic, we will let people know as soon as possible, because this is about everybody knowing what's happening to their money, their council and their services across the board. Because this is so serious at this point, if any of the members here have a question, I'm quite willing to answer them, but I think I've as fully as possible answered where we are with it. Julian.
Thank you very much, Julian Dean, leader of the Green and, what is it called? Green and Progressive Independent Group. Thank you very much for your statements. Very welcome to many people in Shrewsbury and across Shropshire, both in terms of the impact the road would have had as a negative impact on the environment and because of the financial perilous situation of Shropshire. I know that campaigners out there are sort of keen to investigate how we got into this position, and that may well be legitimate, but I appeal both to the council and to campaigners to really take this opportunity to pivot towards really trying to work for a better outcome for Shrewsbury. I welcome your comments on congestion, but it's not just about congestion, is it? It's about equitable access to opportunities to live, work and play across Shrewsbury for all the people who don't have access to the car keys, and for healthier lifestyles. And all of that will also reduce congestion and will also reduce carbon emissions. So I think it's really important that we pivot towards that together to fight for better outcomes for transport in Shrewsbury. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. As you will know, my portfolio holder for active travel and so on is very, very keen on moving these forward. And indeed, the park and ride has already been increased to actually help take traffic away from the town centre. I think some of the Cabinet actually sampled the park and ride this morning. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Heather. I'd like to congratulate the new administration in taking decisive action, although it was the only action possible given the previous council administration had willfully backed itself into a position of being unable to proceed, unable to fund the road, but also unable to afford to cancel it. I hope the government will look kindly on Shropshire Council in this dreadful predicament. This controversial mega project has been criticised by many, including the council's auditors, which is not something that happens often. Auditors called into question project governance, the lack of a plan B, etc. It was secretive and opaque. Delegated spending has been far exceeded not once but twice. Were the contracts for work that was ongoing and now halted written to allow the council to cancel with the council to cancel? That's not easy, is it? Without penalty. So that's one question. Any penalties involved? What are your thoughts going forward on the Oxon Link Road and the West Suey and so on? And of course, Shrewsbury Moves. We have that amazing master plan at our fingertips. And as Julian's just mentioned, 22% of households in Shrewsbury don't have access to a car. That's 15% across the whole of Shropshire. So changing how we move around and providing real alternatives is vital. And is it the intention to hold an inquiry as previously requested by the Lib Dems when in opposition?
Thank you, Rosemary. We have a lot of work to do around this, not least around that 39 million and how we actually badge that with the government and the minister in particular, and whether we can get some something back to increase and improve other areas. Shrewsbury Moves is also terribly important to all of us, but it's all part of a much bigger plan, and so there's got to be a lot of work done before we get to that point, including around the Oxon Link Road and what we might do with that, and how we might use some of that to deal with the Welshpool congestion, Welshpool Road congestion. It's a much bigger plan, and we will try to do that with as many people as possible, so that it isn't just us making those decisions, that everybody can see, and we're open and transparent. So I'm sure we will be involving you, Rosemary, if you need to, but I can't give you hard and fast plans at this point because we're dealing with the money.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Dan.
Thank you, Leader. I think for the Conservative group, it's disappointment. I was listening to Radio Shropshire this morning, and we heard the MPs for Telford and the MP for Wrekin welcoming the government investment for their scheme linking the M54 to the M6. The radio report had local representatives saying how brilliant it was that small villages would be spared from the traffic with the new road. Had representatives from businesses in Telford saying how important it was for their production. And then we get to Shropshire, where the scheme hasn't been backed by government, despite the fact that they are backing schemes in Wiltshire, in Leeds, in Buckinghamshire and in Essex. And these were schemes where the government was providing significant investment, where there isn't very much or very at all amount of borrowing for those councils. And with the business case for the North West Relief Road being so strong, the indications that the Conservative group and the administration previously had from the government were good. So it is a bitter disappointment, really. And in places like Oxfordshire, the local council run by a Liberal Green coalition, they are implementing the kind of measures which many opponents of the North West Relief Road campaign for. And they, in their online report, say that they're doing that because they have the outer ring complete, where they can prioritise cycling, walking and public transport. And in Shropshire, we have an administration that wants to promote active travel, but we won't have the infrastructure to make that a success. And I think really it's disappointment for many people, particularly in those North of Shrewsbury villages. So I guess what thoughts and mitigation will there be for those residents within the centre of Shrewsbury affected by the congestion, as well as those people in those villages that's north of Shrewsbury who were depending on this road?
Thank you, Dan. And as I said at the very beginning of this, there were strong feelings on both sides. But when it comes to it, there were all sorts of impacts that are often challenged around the environmental impact and so on. And we are now in a position that it isn't about, I'm about to circulate that letter to everybody from Lillian Greenwood yesterday, but actually none of this, the DFT told us, or the letter from Lillian Greenwood says was ever part of the policy and was ever fully funded. So I would hate to say this to you, but I think your group was sold a pup. So it's in many ways this is the only way forward for us. And I'm sure that the Conservative group would not want to find more and more services disappearing because of the gap in the budget. So thank you for all of that.
Put out a statement at the time saying, you know, we understood that you were caught between a rock and a hard place and really didn't have any choice in doing what you did. But still, we have the question, and I have raised a members' inquiry asking for information about how we managed to spend tens of millions of pounds and not lay a single centimetre of tarmac. And I still haven't had a response to that. So that, to me, that level of transparency would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. And I think it would be important for all of us to see how that was actually spent. But some of it was certainly around the engineering works, the surveying and so on, because all of that is expensive. But actually, I'm sure that will be forthcoming for us all, because we do need to see that. Of the 39 million, 20.4 million, I think, is actually the government funding. Some of it's LEP funding, some of it's our funding. But actually, we do need to know exactly how that was spent. Thank you, Dawn. If there's nothing else, and there will be obviously over the years more, over the months coming, more around this and what we're going to do for the future and so on. I do need it over in the next few months. I don't want to spend the rest of my life looking at the North West Relief Road. So thank you all very much, in which case we will now move on to the minutes of minutes of the last meeting, which was June the 11th. And Kate Halliday wanted a slight tweak, and we asked her exactly what it was she wanted. Can I run past you, Rosemary, this, because she didn't manage to come back? I think she wanted included, the leader confirmed that no specialist advice had yet been sought or insurers notified around the changes of the legislation around the ruling around public toilets and all the rest of it in the I need to find the section in the minutes around her question on LGBT and
it's about the definition of sex.
Yes.
By the Supreme Court, isn't it? So perhaps that should be included, that wording.
It is. Well, it was in the original question. It was in the, but from what she said, we couldn't work out whether she just wanted this piece added in.
Just, would you mind giving me a moment to just check?
That's the minutes. I get the minutes up as well. As Kate asked, had specialist legal advice been sought on this matter?
Yeah.
And insurers advised? And
so I think Kate has sent the text of what she actually recorded it, because she was on if you recall, she was on a train station.
Yeah, I do remember. Yes.
So she's written the transcript of what the supplementary question was. So that was in her email that she sent on the 8th, yesterday.
We will check with Kate, but I will resolve to approve.
Yes.
Whatever.
Yeah, best to check with her, really.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
And then make sure that it is correct. Okay.
Thank you.
And I was here. I heard what she was saying. It's just I want to put in what she actually said, which she wants us to say, rather than make up something and then it be wrong. Great. Okay. Super. Thank you very much. We now move. Yes. Have we approved that? Okay. Thank you very much. We now move on to public question time. So, with public question time, the first question is from Graham Betts, and David Basma is to respond. Okay, and Tim Collard will read out the question.
Thank you. The question is this. In late 2024, Shropshire Council Monitoring Officer accepted the Ombudsman did not consider the removal of raised, plateaued speed tables, RPST, from the plans of Red Deer Road in Shrewsbury as part of an investigation. The monitoring officer also accepted the complaint did not raise this in the complaint leading to the same investigation. In a question to Cabinet on the 16th of January 2019 from Mr. Chris Lemon, the Council response states the Ombudsman had considered the removal of RPSTs to justify their removal, thereby misleading the public with an untrue statement. The Cabinet response also stated that the RPSTs had been built, which is demonstrably untrue. The Ombudsman's investigation has also been cited in a Council letter dated the 26th of April 2024 to justify sanctioning an individual under the Council's unreasonably persistent and vexatious persons policy. That individual had been trying to correct the Council's misleading statement and asked why the RSPTs had been removed from the original road plans at Council request and contrary to its design policy. Despite making freedom of information requests, the Council is unable or unwilling to state why the RSPTs were removed from the original plans. Will the Cabinet please apologise for the use of false information to mislead the public, exonerate the individual unreasonably sanctioned under the unreasonably persistent vexation persons policy, and explain why the RPSTs were not constructed as claimed?
David.
Thank you, Mr. Betts, for the question. It is accepted that the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman did not consider the removal of raised plateau speed tables, RPST, from the plans of Red Deer Road in Shrewsbury as part of the investigation undertaken in 2018, and that the response to a question by Shropshire Councillor Chris Lemon in 2019 was not accurate. It's not entirely clear why, but the inaccuracy might be explained by various changes in plans relating to the development. The Council does apologise for providing this inaccurate information, but there was no intention to mislead the public. It has also not been possible to establish the exact reason why the RSPTs were removed from the original road plan submitted in 2013. However, as previously documented, this was largely due to a change in design standards. The letter referred to by the questioner, dated the 26th of April 2024, issued under the Council's unnecessary, unreasonably persistent and vexatious persons policy, was written by Professor Mark Barrow, who left the Council earlier this year. That letter refers to a number of grounds for classifying the individual referred to as vexatious, and it's not clear whether the decision of Professor Barrow was based solely on the issue of the RPST or other factors. The vexatious classification expired on the 25th of April 2025, after 12 months, and given that it's no longer possible to discuss the matter with Professor Barrow, there is no intention to review his decision.
Thank you, Dave, very much. Shall we then move on to the next question, which is from John Palmer, who is with us. Join us at the table.
Thank you, Chair. A safe and secure environment in Shrewsbury Town Centre allows economic development, social progress, and individual liberties to thrive. Politics is about choices. Shropshire Council's Conservatives-run Cabinet in October 2024 decided to crash 24/7 proactive live CCTV monitoring in Shrewsbury Town Centre against the wishes of the public. Has Cabinet considered restoring the service to its essential gold standard? This could be funded from the savings achieved from the long overdue rationalisation of senior management roles and or the cancellation of the £28 million plans to transform the non-statutory services choices at Shrewsbury Sports Village, including a new second public swimming pool. Residents' and visitors' safety and security are widely considered to be a first and most fundamental responsibility. Halving serious violent crime and halving violence against women and girls is a local and national emergency. Be progressive and save us from the threats posed by beer monsters and far-right supporters littering our county town.
Thank you very much, John. David?
I think it's me for this one, Heather. Thank you for your question.
Anyway,
thank you for your question, Mr. Palmer. Obviously, this is a huge issue for the whole county and anyone who's Shrewsbury, perhaps most of all residents in Quarry Division, so I'm very alive to the risks. Shropshire Council's cabinet under the previous administration, as you said, received a paper in October 2024 and recommended and approved a best endeavours approach to out-of-hours CCTV monitoring, with officers able to balance CCTV monitoring with receiving out-of-hours calls. This was the recommended option at the time for a non-statutory service in the absence of any further partner funding commitments for active monitoring, and the council continues to do that, providing CCTV evidence to police in relation of incidents of concern in the town. The current best endeavours arrangement for Shrewsbury is, it must be noted, more than the council delivers in other parts of the county where partner agencies deliver this function directly. The maintenance of the CCTV system is now being undertaken by Shrewsbury Town Council. This has led to an improvement in the operational capability of the system, with a number of operational cameras significantly improved. A number were previously out that have been repaired. I want to thank the Town Council for their proactive support to ensure residents still see a good service, which assists in keeping the town safe for all. The Council's budget position, as you will know, remains challenging, and the administration committed to ensuring Shropshire Council moves to a financially sustainable position and can balance its budget this year. As part of this, the administration has set a clear priority focus on discussions with our town and parish councils, which I've been leading on, including Shrewsbury Town Council and other partner agencies. That regards services and further updates on these discussions with regard to topics including CCTV and the future of swimming provision in Shrewsbury, which you also reference, will be provided by Cabinet as the work progresses. In the interest of transparency, since receiving this question, I've spoken with senior officers who have confirmed that the current CCTV staffing budget is £239,970 per annum. I would also, in brief, add that counterintuitively, the impact of changes to capital schemes on our revenue budget might actually mean that the cancellation of some schemes would put us in a more challenging position rather than less when it comes to making funding available for non-statutory services like CCTV.
Thank you. In which case, that's the end of the public question time, and we move on to member question time, and we have Rosemary with her question with us.
Thank you. So phases 1 and 2 of the Weir Hill development in the South Sustainable Urban Extension are broadly completed. It seems a phase 3 planning application is imminently expected to add a suggested 460 new homes to the 600 already built. This quiet corner of Shrewsbury is forever changed, and nowhere more noticeably than on the surrounding roads. In agreement with Shropshire Council, the developer contributed £250,000 towards improvements to Belvedere Bridge and £50,000 to provide a footpath and cycle route from the estate to London Road to give travel options for residents accessing shops, schools, GPs and other local needs. These facilitating works are the responsibility of Shropshire Council, and the council has been paid. What has been done to make the bridge safe for two-way traffic? When will the joint foot and cycle path be completed?
David.
Thank you, Rosemary, for your question. It's an interesting one which affects my division as much as others in Shrewsbury. Do come back to me on this reply. The Belvedere Bridge is not a Shropshire Council asset. It is the responsibility of Network Rail, and as such, all potential work requires their approval. Despite engagement starting in late 2022, progress has been difficult and additional requirements have been introduced. Network Rail have mandated increasing the bridge parapet height as part of their suicide prevention strategy, which was not part of the original agreement and has complicated matters significantly. The officer who is taking a leading role in this project has recently left the council, following which a review of the SIL schemes was carried out. This identified a number of key risks, namely construction risks and liability issues, all of which present financial risk to the authority. Based on the current position, it looks very unlikely that footway widening on the bridge will be achievable based on the requirements from Network Rail. We will be re-engaging with Network Rail to highlight the safety concerns and identify a workable solution to these long-standing issues.
Thank you, David. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, David, for that. I just had a couple of questions really. One about the bridge. Have we engaged the local MP for assistance with this? I think it sounds like an impossible task, doesn't it? Something that keeps getting a bigger project and bigger project. It is essential, and it was part of the agreement to allow what was 600 homes, now going to be 1,000 homes, to have alternative traffic routes. And I also, you haven't really talked about the footpath from London Road to London Road from the estate. At the moment, people there without cars have a really long walk around to try to get anywhere local. They're effectively disconnected and car dependent where they live, and they are within town, but it is isolated. So perhaps you could comment on that.
Yeah, thanks, Rosemary. Yeah, to be honest with you, and it's only recently that I've discovered this situation. We will re-engage with Network Rail, and yes, I will engage with Julia Buckley, the MP, to make sure that we have Sheena aware of the situation and that we can get her support, perhaps in discussions with government directly. So yes, the other issue to do with access to Weir Hill, the other issue we are considering at the moment is another pedestrian crossing further down to link, particularly for the college, regarding college students. And if you get in touch with me, I'll try and give you more details on that.
Thank you. I'm sure we will follow up with that work, so that's useful. We now have a question from Kate Halliday about the parking in Bellevue and Coleham. Is Kate with us? No, we've just had an email about the minutes, so that's that's useful. So do you want to read her question for us?
Yeah, happy to. Bellevue and Coleham is experiencing persistent problems of people parking their vehicles on residential streets and walking into town, leaving their cars for the day and sometimes for weeks. It is likely people are doing so to avoid car park charges, which have recently increased. As a result, residents in Bellevue are having problems getting in and out of their driveways or finding a parking space near their home. Cars are parking at junctions, making visibility and accessibility a problem. And on narrow streets, there are concerns about emergency vehicles being able to gain access. Cars are parking on pavements, sometimes with all wheels on the pavement, causing full obstruction and creating problems for pedestrians, especially those with prams, mobility scooters. Cars are also obstructing the road, parking in turning circles, over driveways and double parking, causing problems for vehicular access. In 2020, Bellevue was identified as a neighbourhood that would be consulted regarding residential parking permits. This was paused during the pandemic, and then when I put a question to Cabinet in 23, the portfolio holder at the time would not commit to accepting any new areas for consideration. Will the new administration consider new areas for resident parking permits, and can Bellevue be included as an area for consideration?
Thank you, Rosemary. David. Oh no, it's Rob.
Thank you.
I should look at the questions and
No,
not
it's okay.
what I've got written
It's
here.
okay. We're all getting used to it. On the specific issue of pavement parking, at present, local authorities outside of London lack the necessary enforcement powers to properly tackle the problem. The Johnson government launched a public consultation on pavement parking in 2020, but successive governments, including the current one, have not provided a formal response. In May, alongside Councillor Vasma, I wrote to all of Shropshire's MPs asking them to support an early day motion tabled by Carla Denyer MP in Parliament, calling on the government to publish the outstanding summary responses to the consultation with recommendations, a roadmap and the necessary funding for local authorities to introduce legislation to tackle inconsiderate pavement parking across England, similar to that which is currently being implemented in Scotland and which has been in place in London since 1974. At present, this has only been signed by Helen Morgan MP. Regarding Bellevue and Coleham, the council appreciates there is limited parking and the area is affected by a number of parking issues due to its proximity to the town centre. These locations will most likely need to be considered in their entirety as a coherent controlled parking zone. Officers have a list of potential areas that they agree need to be considered, and that does include Bellevue and Coleham. Due to current capacity constraints, the council will need to bring in additional resources, potentially using external partners to help progress these schemes with the associated counts and data collection, portfolio and local member input, preparatory designs, presentation and discussion at local working groups, other informal consultation before formal public consultation can be progressed to hopefully deliver a scheme that meets the needs of residents.
And a supplementary?
Yeah, the supplementary is about consultation. So, but it was specifically to ask, which you've already answered, really, that local residents are specifically consulted with, as well as a wider consultation. But
yes, if we want to introduce new control parking zones, consultation has to be a part of that.
Right, thank you.
Thank you all very much. So that's member question time finished, and we will move on to item 6. There are no scrutiny items at this present time. I'm sure there will be quite a lot in the future as we move on to doing a lot more pre-scrutiny. Ruth.
Just to comment, if I may, Chair, that the call-in of the telecare charging policy to people scrutiny, because there was no further action required, there's nothing further to bring forward today, and that implementation will take place after that meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is the statement, is the annual Treasury Management Report, which is Roger, please, portfolio holder for finance.
Thank you, Chairman. As a Cabinet Member for Finance, it's my pleasure to present this report. It is for 24-25 under the previous administration, but if members will look at it, it goes to here and also the Audit Committee, and will be going to Council for their approval and their agreement. So the recommendations are that members are recommended to approve the actual 24-25 prudential and treasury indicators in this report, and also note the annual Treasury Management Report for 24-25. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Right. Thank you. In which case, can we adopt?
I'll propose.
Thank you. A seconder? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. That was really quick, as I thought it would be. We then move to the annual customer feedback report, which is Alex.
Thank you, Heather. So this is the cabinet paper has attached to it a separate report. I'm going to run through the report itself and then go back to the recommendations and take that in sort of 2 parts. So this is the customer feedback annual report, which dates from the 1st of April 2024 to the 31st of March this year. If you look at the report itself, items 1 to 14 are essentially retrospective, so they're a report on what happened during that period of time. And items 15 and 16 refer to the Ombudsman's complaint handling code and their response to some of the complaints Shropshire's been handling, which is a more forward-facing part. So to run through, this report summarises all the customer feedback Shropshire Council received during the year 2024-5. More formal feedback is included, covering comments for more sort of formal responses, complaints and compliments. There were 3,079 cases of feedback received, and of those, 952 complaints progressed to investigation. We've had just under 2,400 complaints this year. That is an increase on last year and on previous years, which is of course worrying. In brief, this has been driven by a number of the usual factors you would suspect people complain to the council about, you know, to do with street scene and highways. But specifically, there's been a distinct and quite worrying rise in complex cases, particularly at stage 2, and EHCPs, as you might expect, given the significant increase in demand for them, have been the real underlying factor in terms of the staff time that's had to be used in the complaints process. So, as I said, there's been a total of 3,079 cases, 2,386 of those are complaints, 245 comments and 448 compliments. There are some useful examples throughout the report of what those compliments and complaints look like. I'll refer to one shortly. There's been a 55% increase in the number of customer feedback cases received since 2016-17. So just the number of interactions with the council has been radically increasing, though actually the volume of complaint investigations has slightly stabilised in recent years, even though it is up. This may be due to several factors. Officers suggest including work to encourage first-time concerns to be handled as service requests rather than going through the complaints process, so Fix My Street being a factor in sort of mitigating that demand, and some lack of capacity in the system to handle more investigations has perhaps changed some of the way that they've been responded to. Coordination capacity hasn't increased in that time, despite the 55% growth in the number of pieces of feedback Shropshire Council has been receiving. There is some positive news within the performance figures. The average response time to complaints at stage 1 has improved to 23 days. Although that is good news, there are still significant issues with overdue cases. 28% of stage 1 responses were overdue. The figures suggest that there is some very efficient handling in some services and longer response times in others. So it is not the complaint system per se, so much as the back of that system, which is leading to some of the longer and shorter response times. This can of course be a useful indicator of team size and capacity in relation to demand, and some areas of that specific pressure, as I've referenced earlier, are highlighted in the report. And as I say, the number of complaints progressing beyond stage 1 has increased, with 15% of all complaint investigations now at stage 2 or beyond. In that attached report, there is some sort of useful examples of the sort of complaints we're getting. Those not specifically HCP to do with children's services. One example is a complaint relating to children's case management Northwest. There's been a lack of contact with her regarding the children's welfare since they were removed from her care earlier in the year. She also states that she's been trying to arrange contact with them, but no one is updating her or arranging it. Obviously, those are incredibly concerning. And as I say, the number of the more serious cases and more complex cases, which are then more time-consuming cases within the complaints process, has increased. It's a lot of those sorts of comments you see throughout. In 2024-5, 79 complaints were referred to the Ombudsman, 31 cases decided and 15 investigated. Of these, 9 were upheld. Our rate of upheld cases by the Ombudsman is 60% compared to 80% for similar local authorities. This is an improvement, but obviously it's relatively small numbers, so the difference between 9 and 12 would be a 25% increase, obviously, so it's not necessarily the best metric, though we are obliged to report that. So that's what has happened. As I say, items 15 and 16 in that report refer to the Ombudsman's Complaint Handling Code, so the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman's Complaint Handling Code will be used in the assessment of complaints and recommendations from April 2026. The code requires significant changes in the council's ways of working, though it is not strictly statutory. Obviously, an ombudsman's report has to be taken heed pretty closely, and we have to do a lot of work to meet that those suggestions. As a result of this, a separate report to this, which will also feed back on some of what we've just spoken about, is planned for Cabinet in September. The report will provide an assessment of how well the council is complying with the code pre-implementation, feeding on from the evidence in this report. as I said earlier, stage 1 responses have improved to 23 days, with 28% overdue. I think our internal target is 30 days. However, with the Ombudsman's new code, there is no additional resource. And obviously, we're also seeing that complexity significantly increasing year on year. By way of comparison, the Ombudsman's complaint handling code wants stage 1 complaints logged in the system within 5 days, replied to within 10 days, extensions for another 10 days if there is a good reason, and all dealt with within 20. Obviously, we're currently running at 23 days as an average. As I say, we're more likely to have reduced resource with the budgetary constraints rather than enhanced. So we are going to be presenting that in September. An initial view is that whilst investing in ensuring that complaints process is important, actually demand mitigation might be quite a lot of the route to ensuring that. Because given we have such limited resource, it might be better to spend some of that resource on ensuring that we don't get complaints in the first place by better responses to service requests and similar, than on investing in the complaints process for the service that doesn't have the resource to do what it's meaning to do in the first place. So there's a little bit of a catch-22 there, but we are taking the Ombudsman's code seriously. However, with the sort of open and transparent statement that the resource we have to make that happen quickly is highly limited and will be really difficult to deliver. We'll be also bringing some timelines in September. So the recommendations that members are asked to consider, the recommendations and actions in the annual customer feedback report to support and improve customer feedback performance within Shropshire Council across the board. Key areas of focus, including developing new guidance on remedies and reasonable adjustments, improving customer experience, addressing increases in the number of cases addressing stage 2 and beyond, and supporting staff in dealing with those increasing numbers of complex complaint cases. And we will be bringing something back in September, specifically regarding the Ombudsman's code and what our response is to that and how we intend to meet those high bars that they're setting, or at least do what we can to get closer to it as part of our sort of ongoing commitment to improve that small c customer service. So I recommend this report.
Thank you. Do we have questions? Julian.
Just a suggestion, really. Would it be appropriate, useful for the relevant sections of the report to be flagged with the scrutiny chairs? Just so it seems to me to be quite a useful source for considering items to consider under scrutiny, to have a look at the complaints that we receive. Just my own comment is that, I'm now in my 3rd term, previously only ever had one contact from residents regarding SEND provision. I've had 2 in the last couple of months. It clearly is a real concern to many people, and I think that particular area is going to need some scrutiny work at some stage, especially given the mood music around threats to provision and the service from government. Thanks.
On the scrutiny chair's point, I think that's an excellent idea. We'll make sure that happens. On, as you say, EHCPs and that sort of children's services side, I know that the staff and new portfolio holders are already doing some pretty in-depth work on that, not least due to the recent Ofsted investigations and reports. But yeah, you're right. I mean, in some ways, when you've got a radically increased number of complex cases, the chance that more of those cases end up in the complaint system, it's not inevitable. We can do better, but there's an obvious causal link there. So I think that's a very good idea, and I think probably people committee scrutiny in particular could probably do with having a look at some of the parts of that report.
Thank you. Are there any more questions about that? I think this is really important to us, and if you read the Ombudsman's report, they actually are suggesting trying to prevent these from happening rather than anything else. So I think when you report back in September, it'll be very, very important that we have looked at how we can improve all of that, and the scrutiny work will be useful. So, thank you. Right, in which case, if there's nothing more, we just need to note, I think, that statement. Customer feedback.
Do we need to? There are recommendations in the report.
Yes, there are.
We may need to.
There are 2 recommendations on the report, and there were. I think the Ombudsman has got some recommendations as well.
Come back to in September.
Yeah, which I talked to you about earlier.
Yes.
So, can we please propose the recommendations And seconder, please. Thank you. All those in favour. But we do need to add into that the report back for September because they're not in the recommendations. Okay, great. Thank you. In which case, we now move on to the period 2 financial monitoring report, which is pretty serious. So can I ask Roger to present that, then answer questions?
Thank you, Chairman. Here is the latest monitoring report we have, and it contains more details on the state of our council finances than were presented at the last cabinet meeting. This report contains both good news, a little bit of good news, and bad news. The good news is that our projected reserves have doubled compared with those listed at the end of period 1. This is that the projected overspend for this year has reduced by £800,000. The bad news is that we continue to face increases in costs, especially in the provision of social care, which the government continues to ignore. As will be seen, the projected general reserves have now increased to just over £600,000. This is, of course, far, far below what is considered to be the safe level of £15 million. The pressure is on to deliver more of the savings that the Conservative administration, and I have to use the word dreamed, the Conservative administration dreamed that they could be saved. They, of course, failed to deliver their budgets for many years, and hence the precarious position we now find ourselves in. On the last pages of this month's report are listed savings that the Conservative administration proposed for this year, and also the ones they failed to deliver from previous years. This report shows that nearly 80% of the new savings are projected to be saved this year, a level never yet seen before. Work continues to see how either the remaining ones or alternatives can also be made. On the last page is listed details of the £41 million that the last Conservative administration failed to deliver. Plans are now in place to deliver around 10.5 of these, but at present there are no identified plans to save the remaining £30.7 million. But we do continue to see how we can achieve some of that. The present government have also not helped rural shire authorities like us here in Shropshire by cancelling the Rural Services Grant, plus reducing the amount in grants given to us, whilst increasing those sent to many large urban areas. I will be proposing shortly the recommendations listed in 3.1, 3.2 and especially 3.3, asking that members around this table and senior officers work together and take the needed urgent corrective action to deliver more of the savings and so start to build up our reserves to the safer level that we need. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm sure there will be questions around all of that. So could I? Rosemary.
Thank you. Thanks, Roger. It is depressing reading after more depressing reading, isn't it? And I think in a way we're used to this. Well, not in a way. We are used to this, full stop. My concern is about the general fund projection this early in the year. We're looking at squeaking through with a general fund balance of £600,000, which is pretty much petty cash. I know we'd like to grab it, any 600,000 there is out there, but it just really concerns me. I mean, you've addressed in the appendix the list of items that you've presumably reviewed and found that the savings that were projected are not necessarily going to be achieved. But I just wonder what your plan is to try to stack back some funds into the general fund balance during the year.
Thank you, Chairman. My colleagues around this table are meeting with their budget holders of the different areas that they have in their portfolios. I've asked for meetings with the budget holders in the portfolios that come in my area, and we will be finding, because my aim is to actually improve the general reserves on what they were last March. We can't get up to the 15 million this year. It would be too much of a quick change, and the residents in Shropshire do not deserve the work that would be needed to do and deliver that. So looking for an improvement for this year, so that next year we can start to put, and I use the phrase elsewhere, it's bread on the table this year, next year it's cake. That's my aim. So it is, we do need to build up those levels, because as I said on the radio earlier on today, those rainy days will come sometime, and we need those reserves to actually meet the unexpected calls that will be on our services. Thank you, Chairman.
Just to add to that, there will be a budget forum. We're changing the collaborative budget in the autumn so that everybody is aware of where we're getting to with all of this. I think the most important thing that we've never been able to see before is the lines in the budget which say they're savings. We need to know the detail about them, and we need to know the impact on our residents, because actually it's been quite opaque in the past, as you will remember. And then there will be difficult choices, but at least everybody will actually understand what those difficult choices are and be able to take part in that in the room. We are in a bleak position at the present time, but Roger's working hard with portfolio holders to find a way through all of that. And we are continually finding bits and pieces that actually haven't been added in or have been put on the table as potential savings that were just not achievable. So as we've seen in the past. So we are taking this very, very seriously. Furthermore, next week, as you will know, we have the LGA coming to do a corporate peer challenge to have a look around finances, look at best practice, look at how other councils are doing things, so that we can get lots and lots of information around that. And we have a baseline that somebody independent has done for us to see where we are and where we need to go. So we're doing as much as we can at the present time. So thank you. Any more questions, Dan?
Thanks, Leader. In our last meeting, it was noticed that the previous Conservative administration comparatively saved more last year than any other council. When we were doing the collaborative budget process, the Liberal Democrat group were invited to take part, but I don't believe they did. For me, the biggest issue is actually with the government not giving us enough money to tackle this crisis. But with social care being the biggest expense and costs rising, how will the portfolio holder get these costs down?
Roger, just to put
Thank
you
you,
right.
Chairman. It gives me great pleasure to answer that question. We did take part in the collaborative budget, but to use my words, my personal words, we got so fed up with just seeing lines on a piece of paper saying this saving, that saving, and we were not allowed, not given the background information to do it. So in the finish, we walked away. We walked away because we kept at it and kept at it and kept at it, but we didn't get it. And as the leader says, we will be starting not the collaborative budget, but another budget forum where all the group leaders will be invited, because this is a problem for the council. It's not political. We need to make those savings because, again, I've used the phrase elsewhere. We all want to be masters in our own house. That's our aim. And to do that, we really, really need higher general reserves than what we have now. And the budget process that we will be following later this year is everything on the table. So everybody knows what is there and what the effects will be of all the reductions that are proposed, because we do need to make more reductions. 600,000 is not satisfactory. We need to be up in the millions. Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, are there any? I was going to make the formal proposal, but I don't know if any...
Thank you, Chair. And I just would like to comment on Councillor Thomas's comment regarding social care. I will reiterate that adult and children's social care is a statutory duty. We are committed to making sure that our young people and children are kept safe and secure and are supported correctly, and we know that we bring the right children into care. So those figures fluctuate all the time, and there's very little we can do about it in the short term. But the point I will make is that over 2 years, the social care portfolio has saved £49 million, and there are further savings to make, and the team are working very hard on some transformation and preventative services to deliver those savings.
Thank you. Rosemary.
Yeah, just a small comment following on from Roger's comments about the collaborative budget process that we went through last year. I very much welcome the fact that we will get in the future, I assume, from what Roger said, to lift up the bonnet and have a look at where these proposed savings that really were just numbers on a piece of paper or on a screen. I think it's absolutely essential that we, as councillors, representatives for the taxpayers of Shropshire, that we are able to question in detail whether the veracity of those figures. Is clearly something wrong with the budgeting process. It's never been anywhere near accurate in the time that I've been a councillor, certainly, and before. And I just think that that's absolutely vital, that we get to really prod around and look at the veracity of the figures and question, what we have as a budget.
Julian.
Yeah, well, I support all that, but I think we have to, I do think we owe it to the people of Shropshire to keep hold of the big picture, which is that local government is massively underfunded, and that there's the infighting, the danger of us of infighting within the council as we try to survive, is that we forget that there's been 15 years of austerity, and in reality it's continuing, and the spending review and the news around new spending rules which are yet to be sort of clarified, as I understand exactly what the impact will be on Shropshire. We're not expecting any white knights, and I just think that we need to tell the people of Shropshire loud and clear that public sector spending, local spending, needs to be properly supported by central government and by a taxation system that is appropriate for need, and that includes introducing a wealth tax, etc. I just think we have to keep that in mind whilst we're doing everything we can to get through this year.
Bridget?
Thank you, Chairman. There are some hard decisions to make, and yes, we will be sharing those and the likely effects it is on residents, because we do need to increase our general reserves. And in reply to Councillor Houghton, social care costs are going, but if one looks at the outturn for last year, there was £15 million in what was called the Place Directorate, which failed to materialise in savings. If those were put there, we would be in a different position. So social care is going up, but we need to look everywhere in the council to make sure that those savings that are listed are made. Thank you, Chairman.
I think just to add to all of this before we move on to the recommendations, it really is about us all to be working together now, because it's a really difficult position, and you will have heard me talking about really trying to campaign on social care funding, because we have a demographic that is older, which costs us a lot of money over a very, very rural area. And losing the rural services grant was a huge blow, and it did mean that we were about 10 million worse off. So all of that is really important, and we are underfunded, but actually we need to do something about where we are, because we can't guarantee we're going to have any extra funding from government. There will be a robust entry put into government on our spending, because they are particularly interested in rural spending across councils, where it does cost us a lot more money to deliver a service over 1,200 square miles with an older population, whereas in Birmingham, it's 103 square miles that they deliver their services over. Yes, they've got a lot more people and a lot more council tax coming in to do that. our council tax to deliver those services in social care, which have been progressively shunted to councils to fund, is a huge issue for us. But it isn't just that, it's services in general, it's waste collection, it's anything where we have to send people out to look after people, which is not able to be done online. We can't get out of all of these things by doing everything online because it costs money to do face-to-face meetings. So all of that is part of what we need to do. I am assured we will be putting in a very robust response to the government spending review under the heading of rural services. So it really will be important that we work together, because that's the only thing we can do. So thank you for all of that. We now need to move on to those recommendations, and those are 3.1, 3.2 and 3.3 in your report, which ensure the necessary action is taken. We note the projected general fund balance and formally acknowledge the current information and what it indicates. So do I have a proposer? Thank you, Roger. A seconder? Thank you, Alex. All those in favour? Thank you. Right. We now move on to Shropshire SEND and AP strategy, special education and needs, disability and the alternative provision strategy, which is Andy Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to present this item to Cabinet. The SEND and AP Partnership Board have developed this strategy and outcome framework to support the very best outcomes for children, young people and their families to achieve their best lives. We know that nationally there is a need to improve provision for children and young people with SEND. This is a challenge. It's very challenging within the local context. We have made many improvements to provision for children and young people with SEND, but we recognise the need to strive further to secure the best possible outcomes for children and young people. This work begins to define the strategic aims of SEND in Shropshire and will further develop through identification of more precise outcome measures. This will provide a coherent and consistent direction for practitioners, providers and those who support children and young people and support accountability. I would further like to add, Chair, that I'm hoping that this framework will receive full Cabinet and cross-party support, ensuring the best possible outcomes for the young people and their families across Shropshire. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask a question about that? There was the government actually put out a statement yesterday saying that they were going to be looking at EHCPs and so on. How will that fit with this in the future? I presume we just go on with this and then modify it in the future around whatever government decides to come up with?
I totally agree, Chair. I think it's very important that we continue with this framework because it does set out the framework, which does include all the EHCPs. For many people and many young families with children that currently have EHCPs in Shropshire, there's currently about 3,000 of those. Any speculation about their EHCPs perhaps being removed from their children would be sending shivers down their spines, and I'm sure that they were waking up the other morning with horrendous thoughts of that. So I feel that it's right and proper that we continue with this framework as presented. Chair.
Thank you, Andy. Julian.
Very much welcome this, and in particular the emphasis on co-production and the way that you've involved the Shropshire Parent and Carer Council in developing these targets. My question is, at what stage did this get looked at by scrutiny? Was this triggered by scrutiny? Will it go to scrutiny before it comes to full council? Just in terms of reinforcing that piece about pre-decision scrutiny.
Andy.
What I could say is it certainly should be scrutinised, but I think the time to do that would be perhaps in 6 months' time when it's had the chance to be absorbed by all the various departments. And I think that we should probably come back in 6 months' time and have a look at that to make sure that all the outcomes and those measures in place are being achieved.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Thank you. In which case we have 3 recommendations 3.1, 3.2 and 3.3. Do I have a proposer? Andy and Alex will second. Thank you. In which case, all those in favour? I must say I'm really pleased that this is coming back within 6 months, because I think it's important we keep a tight look at what's going on and how it's working. So thank you. Right, okay. Next item on the agenda is the National Planning Reform consultations and the proposed council response, which are having huge impacts on what we're doing within the council. So David Walker, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks consideration and approval of the proposed responses to 4 government consultations on reforming the planning system. The consultation on speeding up build out seeks views on measures to incentivise and tools for the local authorities to encourage quicker build out of housing. The proposed response is generally supportive of these measures, including the principle of a delayed homes penalty, which recognises that development industry is responsible for delivery of housing. However, it proposes the threshold for mixed tenure housing requirements to ensure schemes target different markets should be more responsive to the community in which it is occurring. The consultation on implementing measures to improve build-out transparency seeks views on proposals to increase transparency of build timescales, including whether the developer of schemes with 50 or more dwellings should be required to, to submit information on intended development timescales and progress updates to local authorities. The proposed response is generally supportive of the proposals, but considers provision of information on timescales and progress should apply to schemes for formation of any dwelling, which is considered particularly important in a rural area. The consultation on reforming site thresholds seeks views on the new minimum scale threshold for residential planning applications and changes requirements for all scales of residential planning application. The proposed response is generally supportive of the proposals. However, it emphasises any change to requirements for residential planning applications must not undermine the ability to reach robust decisions and ensure requirements for biodiversity net gain and other affordable housing provisions are maintained. With specific regard to affordable housing, the response also proposes greater certainty be provided on designated rural areas where lower thresholds at which affordable housing requirements can be achieved. The consultation on reforming planning committees seeks views on the reform of planning committees through a new national scheme of delegation. The proposed response opposes the introduction of a national scheme of delegation. It advocates continuation of a local approach to delegation to maintain local democratic oversight, support the role of town and parish councils in decision making, and allow for recognition of local context and circumstances. It also raises other concerns with proposals if the national scheme of delegation is implemented.
Thank you, David. Questions around this response? Julian.
I'll try and be brief. I mean, the first, I just love the understatement of the first part where it says further consideration of market absorption rates and how they influence developer practice is required. Let's be clear. This is a sledgehammer trying to crack a non-existent nut. The fact that the idea that it's the planning system which is slowing down development is complete nonsense. We know there's something like 1.4 million homes that have been agreed somewhere in the planning system that have not been built nationally, and this just feels, you know, like much of these proposals are an attack on the supposed blockers in local government, when actually that's not the issue at all. And in particular, when you know, I just have to mention the standard method, which I know isn't in the consultation, but the standard method, you know, is actually an incentive to inflate prices, because the further prices are out of reach, the higher the target number is for a local council in terms of how many houses you have to build. It's completely nuts. On top of that, we have a situation where the decision-making authority of councillors is being undermined, and you couple that with, you know, the recent decision to ban councils from changing their governance arrangements, despite the fact that we had referendums in Bristol and Sheffield that supported it. It just feels like the idea that there was a reset relationship between local government and national government in July is a joke, and we are being undermined, and we're being complete lack of respect for local decision making. So I would hope, I understand that the language that you have to use in a consultation is not that sort of language, but I would hope that we nevertheless remain robust in our response to government's, you know, pretty much open door policy to developers, combined with an attack on the rights of local communities to make decisions about their own futures.
Thank you, David.
No, well, I agree with the sentiment of what you said, Charlie. I'm not. Local government should play an important role in a lot of things, and the thrust at the moment seems to be to pull it all in and massively control things from the centre, and really should be pushing it down the opposite way. And it's not been mentioned, but the withdrawal of support for neighbourhood funding is a classic example of how they're not really helping us deliver what is best for Shropshire. But yeah, no, I'll take this.
Thank you. Is anybody anything else that we? Okay, this is an important response, and for me, I know that there are a number of things that actually stop build-outs on sites, but it isn't usually the planning system. It can be a whole range of other things. So, and some of those are actually in our response. So thank you. In which case we then move on to the recommendations, which are 3.1 and 3.2. We consider and approve the submission, which I'm sure we've all read, and that the authority is given to the Service Director, Legal and Governance, in consultation with the portfolio holder, to agree any additional changes that come up. Okay, David?
More than happy to oppose that.
Second, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Right. And we now move on to the transfer of the Coroner's Office to Shropshire Council, which is transferred. It is and it isn't, as it were. Okay, Bernie.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks Cabinet approval for the transfer of 6 Coroner's officers, that is 5 full-time equivalents, from West Mercia Police to Shropshire Council, with a target date of the 1st of October 2025. Coroner's officers support coroners by handling inquiries, liaising with families, collecting evidence, and organising post-mortems and inquests. Currently, coroner's officers are employed and funded by West Mercia Police, but the council has been given notice by West Mercia Police that it intends to cease supporting this function, and as a result it will transfer to the council, as we have the ultimate statutory responsibility to support the coroner. The officers will remain based at Guildhall and will be integrated into the existing registration and coroner's service. The Service Director, Legal and Governance, in consultation with myself as portfolio holder for Health and Public Protection, is seeking the delegated authority to finalise transfer arrangements. A phased funding withdrawal by West Mercia Police over 3.5 years has been agreed between our Chief Executive and the Chief Constable. It should also be noted that the Coroner's Service is funded 60% by Shropshire and 40% by Telford and Wrekin. And the additional unexpected cost for the current financial year is modest at £18,700. Thank you.
Thank you. The Coroner's Office has always physically been with us, in fact, in recent years. So it's about the funding mechanisms as much as moving the office. So, which is why I said it isn't. So, are there any questions about all of that, Rosemary?
Yeah, thank you. It was just a detailed question, really, please, Bernie. In the risk report, the first item 4.1, some current coroner's officers may choose not to transfer to Shropshire Council and either leave or be redeployed across West Mercia Police. This would result in considerable pressure on the remaining team until replacements could be recruited. Is that a potential? Is that seriously potential, or has this not been managed by West Mercia Police?
At this stage, Councillor Dartnell, we don't have the information to answer as to whether any will choose to withdraw or leave the service. But clearly, there will be ongoing discussions with West Mercia Police and the individuals to determine the situation.
Alex?
If I may, just having met with the coroner, it's essentially just due to the 2P process. Of course, workers are given a right to decide which direction they want to go. I think that they've largely worked there for a long time. It's a happy team, so I'm very much hoping that they choose to stay. But it's ultimately in law their choice due to the way the contract's being changed, and we have to account for that.
Thank you. Anything more on that? Okay, in which case we have again recommendations 3.1 and 3.2, which is about the transfer of the management and the service director, legal and governance in consultation with the portfolio holder will agree details of the transfer of staff. Okay. Bernie?
I'd like to propose that.
Okay. Seconded. Thank you, Alex. All those in favour? Thank you. Right. We now have finished the agenda. So the date of the next meeting is Wednesday, the 10th of September at 10:30. Thank you all for attending.